There is a force in the universe that defies our traditional understanding of distance, time, and individuality. It exists not in myth or metaphor, but in the very fabric of reality, confirmed, measured, and yet still cloaked in mystery. It's called quantum entanglement. And despite being a foundational part of modern physics, its implications stretch far beyond the sterile boundaries of science. What we're about to explore is not just a concept that revolutionized quantum mechanics. It's something that could completely reshape how we see ourselves, each other, and the very nature of existence. Quantum entanglement is strange. So strange, in fact, that even Einstein famously referred to it as spooky action at a distance. Here, particles that have once interacted remain inexplicably linked, even when separated by vast distances. A change to one instantly affects the other. No signal, no delay, just instantaneous connection that seems to bypass space and time altogether. But this isn't just about particles. It's about a hidden architecture to reality, an invisible thread that links all things in a web of connection. From the tiniest subatomic particles to the movements of consciousness itself, quantum entanglement invites us to rethink everything we thought we knew. What if the boundaries between you and me are not as solid as they appear? What if thoughts, emotions, even awareness itself, operate on principles that mirror this deep entanglement? Could there be a unified field of connection underpinning all of reality? A field that not only links atoms but consciousness? In the coming moments, you will encounter ideas that may challenge your most fundamental assumptions. You'll discover how particles behave as though distance is an illusion. You'll see why cause and effect, as we've known them, begin to blur. And most importantly, you'll begin to grasp how this isn't just a scientific curiosity. It's a gateway to understanding your own place in the cosmos. We are stepping into the realm where physics and metaphysics begin to echo each other, where the language of science starts sounding eerily similar to ancient teachings, and where the separation between observer and observed, self and other, begins to melt away. This is not a lesson in equations or a lecture in theory. It's an invitation to witness the deeper currents that bind reality together. Because quantum entanglement is not just about particles. It may be the clearest signal yet that everything is connected in ways we've only begun to imagine. So prepare yourself not for answers but for profound questions. Questions that reach beyond the microscope and telescope and into the mirror of your own awareness. Quantum entanglement begins with a simple experiment, but its implications echo through every corner of modern physics. Two particles interact. After their interaction, they go their separate ways. One might travel left, the other right. One might remain on Earth, the other might journey to the edge of the galaxy. But despite their distance, something strange happens. Any change to one particle is instantly mirrored in the other. Not quickly, instantly. How is that possible? This isn't a question of faulty instruments or misunderstood data. Time and again, scientists have tested this effect under rigorous conditions. Particles have been entangled, separated by kilometers, and still demonstrated correlations that defy classical physics. The result is consistent, measurable, and undeniable. To understand just how strange this is, imagine two dice. You roll them miles apart, but every single time, they land on the same number. Not sometimes, every time. And no one's peeking. That's not chance, it's something deeper. Entanglement suggests that once particles share a quantum state, they remain connected in such a way that measuring one affects the state of the other. It's as though they are no longer two independent entities but aspects of a single system, no matter how far apart they are in space. This defies our classical understanding of locality. In Newtonian physics, if something affects another thing, it has to touch it or at least send a signal. Information can't travel faster than light, right? But with entangled particles, the effect is instantaneous, no matter the distance. This challenges the very structure of space-time. What's even more perplexing is that this connection doesn't seem to rely on any signal or force passing between the particles. Instead, It's as though the two are simply the same event expressed in two locations. The implications of that are staggering. Think of it this way. If two particles can behave as one, even when separated by light years, then space itself becomes an illusion of sorts. Distance loses its meaning. Reality, at its most fundamental level, begins to look like a vast holographic network where everything is part of a unified whole. This phenomenon also introduces a new perspective on causality. Traditionally, one event causes another in a neat timeline. A leads to B. But entanglement introduces a simultaneity that makes it difficult to assign a first or second event. It's like watching two dancers perform perfectly synchronized moves, despite being in completely different rooms. Are they responding to each other, or are they both responding to something deeper? That question leads us into territory that borders on the philosophical. What does it mean for reality to be non-local? If particles are linked beyond time and space, what does that say about our perception of separation, independence, and even individuality? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics propose that these entangled systems are not truly separate. Rather, what we perceive as multiple objects are manifestations of a single underlying reality. In this view, consciousness itself may be playing a crucial role in shaping what we observe. The observer and the observed are not two, just different expressions of the same field. This is not spiritual speculation. It's a legitimate interpretation supported by leading physicists. The Copenhagen interpretation, for instance, suggests that quantum systems exist in multiple states until observed. The act of observation causes the system to collapse into one state. In entangled systems, the observation of one immediately affects the other, collapsing both simultaneously, as if they were never truly separate. This begins to blur the line between physics and perception. If observation plays a role in determining reality, then consciousness is not just a byproduct of matter. It's an active participant in the unfolding of the universe. Let that settle in. We are not merely passive witnesses to a pre-existing world. We are entangled with it, shaping it through the very act of awareness. And this takes us beyond the laboratory into the realm of lived experience. Because if this is true at the level of particles, it raises an astonishing possibility that connection is not just a metaphor or an emotional experience, but a fundamental law of the universe. Quantum entanglement suggests that separation is a perceptual artifact. The true nature of reality may be far more unified than it appears. And this unity doesn't just link electrons and photons, it could extend to everything, including us. This opens the door to a radical reinterpretation of consciousness itself. If all things are interconnected at the quantum level, then our thoughts, emotions, and intentions may not be isolated. They might ripple through a shared field of awareness, subtly influencing the fabric of reality in ways science is only beginning to glimpse. Of course, this doesn't mean we can use entanglement to send messages faster than light or read minds. The mechanics of entanglement are subtle, and they resist being harnessed like traditional communication. But the implications are still profound. Because what we're talking about is not communication in the conventional sense, it's communion, a shared state of being, an interconnectedness that transcends space and time, one that suggests the universe is not a cold, indifferent machine, but a living web of relationship and resonance. Even now, physicists struggle to fully explain entanglement. Some suggest that our understanding of time and space is incomplete. Others propose that entangled particles exist in higher dimensional realities, where distance as we know it doesn't apply. There are models that hint at a deeper substratum of reality, something like a quantum field that unites all things beneath the surface. Whatever the answer, one truth is clear: entanglement has rewritten the laws of connection. It has shown us that reality is more mysterious, more dynamic, and far more unified than we ever imagined. And perhaps most importantly, it offers a mirror, a reflection of something ancient and intuitive that humanity has sensed for millennia. That nothing exists in isolation. That behind every moment, every movement, every thought, there is a thread, silent, invisible, but unbreakable, binding all things together in a tapestry of being. Quantum entanglement may have emerged from the sterile floors of physics laboratories, but its implications stretch far beyond particle collisions and wave functions. There's a growing sense, both among scientists and thinkers, that this phenomenon is not confined to electrons and photons. It seems to mirror something far more intimate: our own minds, emotions, relationships, and sense of self. Let's begin with something personal: your experience of reality. Every day you think, feel, remember, and respond to the world around you. But have you ever wondered where your thoughts begin? Or how one emotional ripple can seem to affect those around you? Have you noticed that sometimes connections between people feel instantaneous and inexplicable, like two minds moving in tandem across a space that should separate them? This isn't just poetic imagery. It may point to something more profound, something entangled at the core of consciousness itself. The laws of classical physics assume independence, that one object state has no bearing on another unless there's direct contact. But entanglement broke that assumption in the physical realm. And now, consciousness seems to be echoing that same pattern. If two particles, once connected, can remain linked across distance, then what happens when two people share a powerful emotional or psychological experience? Are they merely separate minds? Or could something deeper be at play? There's an emerging idea that consciousness might not be confined to the brain alone, that awareness could extend beyond the limits of the skull, touching and influencing a shared field. In this framework, your thoughts are not just internal, they ripple outward, subtly influencing and being influenced by the consciousness of others. Just as entangled particles reflect one another instantaneously, our inner lives may not be as private or isolated as they seem. Now, this isn't to say human minds are quantum entangled in a literal sense, not in the way particles are under laboratory conditions. But the patterns are striking: synchronicity, intuition, collective emotion, sudden flashes of knowing. These experiences suggest that something non-local may be embedded in how consciousness functions. Quantum entanglement provides a metaphor, but perhaps also a mechanism. If particles are never truly separate once connected, then perhaps neither are people. And if every particle in your body has been part of the larger cosmic process since the birth of the universe, then by extension you are entangled with everything. Not symbolically, physically. This brings us to a deeper revelation: the interconnectedness of all things. Everything you see, the trees, the sky, the devices we use, the cells in your body, are composed of particles that have interacted with countless others. Through those interactions, entanglement arises. And because everything has interacted, even indirectly, everything is connected through a vast, invisible web of relationships. This web doesn't require physical threads. It exists in the very structure of reality. What one part of the universe does may influence another, not through force, but through resonance. From this viewpoint, you are not a detached observer of the universe. You are part of it, an active node within a boundless field of influence. Your awareness isn't a private chamber. It's an interface. And that interface may connect to a collective consciousness that spans all life, perhaps even all matter. This is not a new idea. Many ancient traditions have spoken of a unified field of consciousness, often described as the one mind, the universal spirit, or the field of being. They didn't have the language of quantum mechanics, but they sensed the same truth: that separation is illusion, and that connection is the fundamental reality. Quantum entanglement gives modern science a glimpse into this ancient wisdom. It doesn't prove spiritual ideas, but it aligns with them in ways that are too compelling to ignore. When you understand that all things are linked at a quantum level, a new kind of responsibility begins to emerge. You are not just living your own isolated life, you are influencing the entire system. Your thoughts matter. Your energy matters. Your state of consciousness affects more than just your inner world. It contributes to the resonance of the whole. This awareness opens the door to personal transformation. When you begin to grasp the reality of connection, not as a metaphor but as a law, you start to treat your own consciousness with more reverence. You become more aware of your emotional and mental patterns. You begin to notice how your internal state subtly shapes your external experiences. This is where the science of entanglement and the art of self-awareness begin to reflect each other. Personal growth, in this context, is no longer just self-improvement. It becomes a process of tuning your frequency, refining your thoughts, emotions, and intentions to resonate more coherently with the universe around you. Just as tuning one string on a guitar can influence the resonance of others, refining your inner world sends ripples through the shared field of consciousness. It's not about control. It's about alignment. And as you align, something profound begins to happen. The sense of isolation starts to dissolve. The pressure to constantly assert yourself or protect your identity softens. You begin to experience a kind of peace that comes not from withdrawal but from realization, a realization that you were never separate to begin with. This is the gift of quantum entanglement when viewed through the lens of consciousness. It reminds us that individuality is not negated by connection. You don't disappear into the whole, you become more clearly aware of your role within it. Just as every cell in a body has its own function but also serves the larger organism, every individual consciousness contributes to the collective. The more self-aware you become, the more your presence begins to resonate with clarity, harmony, and intelligence. And that resonance influences the world in ways you may never fully understand. Entanglement is not chaos, it is coherence. It is the invisible order that allows separate parts to act in harmony without signal, force, or control. And when you live in coherence with that order, something extraordinary happens. You begin to experience synchronicities, moments when thought and reality intersect in ways that feel meaningful. You start to notice patterns that suggest something greater is at work. You become more attuned to what could only be described as guidance, not from an outside authority, but from the intelligence of the field itself. This doesn't mean everything becomes predictable or comfortable. Entanglement doesn't remove uncertainty, but it reveals a hidden unity beneath the surface of events. And once you see that unity, your relationship with life transforms. Fear begins to fade, not because there are no challenges, but because you sense the interconnected intelligence that holds all things together. Even difficulty begins to look like a signal, an opportunity to refine your inner coherence and realign with the field. This is the beginning of wisdom, not the accumulation of facts, but the recognition of patterns. The awareness that everything is part of something larger, and that your consciousness is not a solitary flame, but a spark of the same eternal fire that lights the entire cosmos. Quantum entanglement, then, is more than a discovery in physics. It's a revelation about what it means to be alive. It shows us that relationship is not secondary, it is primary. Connection is not something we must create. It is something we must remember. The illusion is not disconnection, but forgetfulness. And awakening is not about acquiring new truths, but about recalling the one truth that has always been there. You are not separate. You never were. This understanding changes how you engage with others. You start to listen differently, speak differently, think differently. You begin to honor not just your own experience, but the field in which all experience arises. And that field, when tuned with care and awareness, begins to reflect that resonance back to you. In that space, growth becomes inevitable, peace becomes natural, and life, rather than something to be survived or conquered, becomes something to be harmonized with. Entanglement isn't a theory to be believed. It's a reality to be lived. And when you live it, not just intellectually but consciously, you open the doorway to a whole new experience of self, others, and the universe. Science and spirituality. For centuries, they've stood on opposite shores, one grounded in logic and empirical inquiry, the other in intuition and inner experience. But in recent decades, the gap has begun to narrow. And at the center of this convergence is a single, shimmering thread: quantum entanglement. This phenomenon, once relegated to the far reaches of theoretical physics, now whispers secrets that align with the deepest truths of spiritual traditions. It suggests a universe not of isolated particles, but of intimate relationships. A cosmos held together not by force, but by connection. And through this lens, spirituality takes on a new dimension, not as a belief system, but as a recognition of quantum truths echoing through the heart of human experience. Let's begin with something that has puzzled mystics and seekers across time: the experience of oneness. Throughout history, individuals in altered states of consciousness have reported the same extraordinary sensation: the dissolution of boundaries, the sense that the self merges with everything, that all separation is an illusion. In religious texts, this is called divine union. In modern language, it's often described as a non-dual state. But what if this wasn't a trick of the mind or a poetic metaphor? What if those experiences reflected the actual nature of reality? Entanglement suggests that once two systems interact, they can no longer be described independently. Their states become correlated even when separated by vast distances. It's as if the universe remembers, as if the act of interaction creates an eternal bond that cannot be broken. Now consider what happens during profound spiritual experiences. The ego, the sense of being a separate self, dissolves. The boundaries between me and you blur. Time and space lose their grip. What remains is a feeling of interconnected presence. One field, one awareness, one life flowing through everything. Quantum mechanics doesn't describe this directly, but it supports the underlying structure. That separation is a convenient illusion, and that at the deepest level, reality is non-local and unified. This isn't just philosophical speculation. Brain scans of meditators, mystics, and those in deep altered states show reduced activity in the parts of the brain responsible for maintaining a sense of separateness. The experience of unity correlates with a shift in perception, one that quantum physics suggests might reflect a deeper truth, not just a neural quirk. If the fabric of the universe is woven with entangled threads, then perhaps what spiritual traditions call unity consciousness is a direct attunement to that fabric. Now, let's look at another mystical phenomenon: healing. In many cultures, healing is not seen as merely physical. It's energetic, emotional, spiritual. Healers work not just on the body, but on the subtle connections that link body, mind, and soul. And strangely, distance seems to play no role. Stories abound of healers working across countries, separated by thousands of miles, yet achieving results that defy logic. Could entanglement offer a clue? In quantum experiments, information about one particle affects another instantly, even when separated by distance. No signal travels between them. The change happens simultaneously. This doesn't violate the speed of light, because no traditional information is transmitted. Instead, the entangled system behaves as one. What if healing works on a similar principle? If two consciousnesses become entangled through intention, emotion, or shared experience, then perhaps shifts in one can influence the other. Not through force, but through resonance. A subtle rebalancing, like tuning one instrument and hearing another fall into harmony. This is not to claim that quantum physics proves energy healing, but it suggests that distance may not be the barrier we assume. That influence can be non-local. That connection transcends physical proximity. In this light, healing becomes less about intervention and more about coherence. The healer doesn't impose change. They align with a deeper order and allow that order to express itself through the field of connection. This brings us to transformation. Personal transformation is often viewed as a psychological process. But from a quantum perspective, it may be something far more fundamental. You are not just a static identity. You are a dynamic waveform, constantly shifting, vibrating, entangling with every experience and thought. When you change your internal state, your beliefs, your emotions, your frequency, you alter the web of entanglements around you. You shift how you interface with reality. And that shift ripples outward, influencing the matrix of possibilities available to you. Spiritual awakening, in this view, is not an escape from the physical world. It is a reconfiguration of your relationship to the field. You become less reactive, more intentional. You stop pushing against the current and start flowing with it. The outer world begins to reflect inner shifts, not because you've forced it to change, but because the entangled nature of reality responds to coherence. This coherence is not passive. It's active. It requires clarity of thought, stillness of emotion, and precision of intention. That's why so many spiritual disciplines emphasize practices like meditation, breathwork, and presence. Not to retreat from the world, but to harmonize with the unseen order beneath it. From this perspective, enlightenment is not a destination. It's a frequency. And when you tune into that frequency, you begin to experience what ancient mystics called grace, not as a divine reward, but as the natural flow of an entangled, intelligent universe. Now consider one final insight, the cosmic connection. If entanglement stretches across galaxies, across time, across dimensions we don't yet understand, then what does that say about your place in the universe? It says you are not alone. Not just in the sense of having companions, but in a far deeper way. Every atom in your body has been part of a star. Every particle in your cells has interacted with other particles across billions of years. You are, quite literally, made of the universe, and you are still connected to it through a network of invisible threads. This means your thoughts don't exist in isolation. They reverberate through the field. Your emotions are not private. They are part of the vibrational soup in which all beings live. And your evolution contributes to the evolution of consciousness itself. The ancient phrase, as above, so below, begins to make more sense. Because at both the quantum level and the human level, everything reflects everything else. There is no separation between the material and the spiritual. No hard divide between science and mysticism. There is only relationship, pattern, resonance, intelligence in motion. Quantum entanglement doesn't eliminate the need for spiritual insight. It illuminates it. It shows us that the universe is not a dead machine, but a living system. That matter is not inert, but responsive. That consciousness is not a byproduct, but possibly the very fabric of existence. When science begins to speak the language of connection, spirituality is no longer a leap of faith. It becomes a recognition of what is already present. And when spirituality is stripped of dogma, it aligns seamlessly with the quantum understanding that you are part of something infinite, and that every thought, every action, every breath ripples across the whole. You are not a speck in the cosmos. You are the cosmos aware of itself. The science of spirituality is not about reducing mystery. It's about recognizing that mystery is structured, coherent, and participatory. That the unknown is not chaos, but deeper order. And that your role is not passive observation, but conscious participation. You are not here to watch the universe unfold. You are here to co-create it. Not with effort, but with awareness. Not with control, but with resonance. This is the message of quantum entanglement when seen through the eyes of the soul. You are not a bystander. You are the field. You are the frequency. You are the pattern unfolding itself. And once you begin to live from that place, everything changes. Quantum entanglement has transformed the way we understand the fabric of existence, but its implications extend far beyond the lab and far beyond what most people imagine. While the phenomenon has earned a place in scientific textbooks and theoretical papers, it has also become a magnet for bold claims, misunderstood analogies, and misconceptions that blur the line between science and speculation. In this part of the journey, we move beyond the core concept of entanglement to examine what lies just beyond its edge. The myths that cloud it, the research that expands it, and the mystery that still pulses at its center. Let's start with clarity, by stripping away the most persistent misunderstanding. That entanglement is a kind of magical communication system. The popular notion suggests that entangled particles can send signals faster than light, enabling telepathy, instant data transfer, or real-time conversations across galaxies. But that's not how the phenomenon works. Entanglement does not allow information to be transmitted in the traditional sense. It is not a communication channel, but a correlation. When two particles are entangled, measuring one reveals information about the other. Not because one particle sends data to the other, but because they are part of a single system with a shared state. This distinction matters. It preserves the core rules of relativity and avoids slipping into pseudoscience. But it also opens a doorway to something subtler and more profound, the realization that our universe may be fundamentally non-local, not because things travel faster than light, but because at a deep level, distance is an illusion. This is where the frontiers of research are now pointing. Scientists are no longer questioning whether entanglement exists. That's been established. The new questions are more provocative. Why does it exist? What does it mean about the nature of space, time, and consciousness? And how far does it go? Recent experiments are beginning to push those boundaries. Physicists have entangled particles across kilometers, across fiber optic networks, even between satellites in orbit. The results are consistent. Entanglement persists, regardless of the space between particles. But what's even more intriguing is that these experiments are forcing physicists to confront the limits of classical thinking. Take, for example, the idea of spacetime itself. In many quantum gravity theories, like string theory or loop quantum gravity, space and time are not fundamental. They emerge from more basic elements, like entanglement patterns or quantum information flow. In these models, spacetime is not the stage on which reality plays out. It is the result of deeper, entangled relationships. This is radical. It means entanglement may not just happen in space. Space itself may arise from entanglement. If that's true, then everything we perceive as separate is simply an artifact of a deeper unity. The sense of being here instead of there, or now instead of then, may be a kind of illusion necessary for survival, but not reflective of the deeper structure. And yet, even as the science pushes into this territory, a caution remains. The temptation to leap from quantum physics to personal philosophy is strong, but the bridge must be built carefully. Too often, ideas like entanglement are stretched beyond recognition, used to justify anything from miracle cures to instant manifestation. This doesn't mean those things are impossible. It simply means that entanglement as a scientific principle has a specific meaning. To apply it metaphorically or spiritually is fine, but it must be done with precision, with humility, and with the understanding that the mystery is bigger than our explanations. In truth, one of the most powerful aspects of entanglement is that it resists being fully understood. No matter how precise the math becomes, no matter how clear the results are in the lab, there remains an element of awe. A sense that something is at play which cannot be reduced to formulas or logic. This is not a flaw. It is a feature. Mystery is not the enemy of science. It is its source. Every major breakthrough, every shift in human understanding, has come from staring into the unknown and refusing to look away. Entanglement, in this sense, is an invitation to think bigger, to question assumptions, and to explore the possibility that reality is far stranger than we've ever allowed ourselves to believe. And that exploration is accelerating. Quantum computers, for instance, rely on entanglement to function. By entangling qubits, quantum bits of information, these machines can perform calculations that would take classical computers millions of years. This is not just a technological leap. It is a philosophical one. Because it shows that entanglement is not just a curiosity, it is a resource, a tool, a power source drawn from the structure of reality itself. Meanwhile, in quantum biology, researchers are finding evidence that entanglement may play a role in processes like photosynthesis, bird navigation, and even human cognition. If these findings hold, they suggest that life itself may be tapping into quantum principles in ways we barely understand. And then there's the ultimate question: what does entanglement say about consciousness? This remains one of the most controversial topics in science. Some physicists argue that consciousness has no role in quantum mechanics, that it is merely a bystander. Others propose that consciousness and quantum phenomena are deeply intertwined, that our awareness may be entangled with the fabric of the cosmos. There is no consensus, but there is curiosity, and the questions being asked are no longer considered fringe. They are being explored in peer-reviewed journals, academic conferences, and leading research institutions. The point is this: the quantum realm is not just a playground for physicists. It is a mirror, a reflection of principles that may govern everything, from the movement of galaxies to the movement of thought. And as we explore it, we are also exploring ourselves. This is why it's essential not to rush to conclusions, not to wrap the mystery in slogans or oversimplifications. The power of entanglement is not in what it proves, but in what it points to. It points to a universe that is relational, not mechanical. It points to a reality where distance is relative, connection is primary, and the part cannot be understood without the whole. It points to a new way of seeing, not just the world, but our place within it. To go beyond the quantum realm is not to leave it behind, but to recognize that it opens a door to questions that may never be fully answered, a door to possibilities that stretch the imagination, a door to a deeper kind of knowledge, one that honors the limits of logic while still inviting us to listen for what lies beyond it. This is not about abandoning science. It's about allowing science to grow, to expand its definitions, to evolve its methods, and to make room for wonder. The physicist who probes entanglement and the mystic who contemplates oneness are not so different. Both are drawn to a truth that feels just out of reach. Both are willing to challenge the surface of things. Both are moved by something they cannot fully explain. The quantum realm, then, becomes a bridge, not just between particles, but between worldviews, between science and soul, between inquiry and intuition, between what we know and what we long to remember. And as we step beyond it, we're not leaving behind the laws of nature, we're stepping into their deeper expression. An expression that includes uncertainty, that welcomes paradox, that whispers, there is more, always more. And it's in that more where transformation becomes possible. The journey beyond the quantum realm is not about answers. It's about living in the presence of questions that matter. Questions that expand the heart as much as they stimulate the mind. What is connection? What is consciousness? What is the nature of the real? We may never fully know, but we can align with the mystery. We can engage with it not as a problem to be solved, but as a presence to be honored. And in doing so, we participate in the great unfolding, not as outsiders, but as co-creators. Not as isolated minds, but as entangled beings, woven into the infinite tapestry of what is, what was, and what might yet be. Quantum entanglement isn't just a concept for physicists and philosophers. It's a mirror that reflects something deeply personal, an ancient truth hidden in plain sight. The realization that everything is connected is not just a scientific discovery. It is an awakening. And that awakening begins not in the equations of a textbook, but in the stillness of your own awareness. To know that connection is one thing. To live it is another. This is where the real work begins. Because the implications of entanglement go far beyond intellectual curiosity. They reach into the fabric of your daily life, into how you see yourself, how you relate to others, how you engage with the world. You are not separate from the whole. You are not an isolated observer looking out at a distant universe. You are the universe observing itself. And your consciousness is not confined to the space behind your eyes. It is part of a wider field, a quantum field of awareness that stretches across time and space. So how can you begin to experience this connection? Not as a theory, but as a living truth. It begins with practice. Simple, intentional practices that align your awareness with the interconnected nature of reality. These are not mystical rituals or grand gestures. They are quiet acts of presence that allow you to feel what has always been true. Start with breath. The inhale and the exhale are not just biological processes. They are exchanges between your inner world and the world around you. With every breath, particles once part of distant stars flow through your lungs. You are entangled with the cosmos at a level so intimate, so fundamental, that the boundary between you and it disappears. Next, observe your thoughts. Don't chase them. Don't resist them. Just notice them. Every thought you have arises from a web of experience, memory, and subtle influence. You are not a closed system. Your mind is porous. It is shaped by everything it has touched, and everything that has touched it. When you sit in stillness, you begin to feel it. The shimmering presence beneath the noise. The quiet signal that hums beneath the static. This is not imagination. It is the beginning of awareness. Awareness of the field in which all things are entangled, not just particles but possibilities. Meditation is a gateway not to escape reality, but to tune into it. When the mind is quiet, you begin to perceive the faint threads of connection that have always been there. The more you notice them, the more you live in alignment with them. Mindfulness is another key. Pay attention to the moments you usually overlook. The sound of wind through leaves, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the way your body feels when you pause and simply exist. These are not meaningless fragments. They are portals into presence. And presence is the state in which connection becomes tangible. There's also the practice of intention. Intention is not merely wishing. It is focus with energy, direction with clarity. When you set an intention, whether it's to heal, to understand, to create, you are sending a signal into the quantum field. That field responds not through cause and effect, but through resonance. This is where the power of belief enters. Not belief as blind acceptance, but as alignment. What you believe shapes what you perceive. What you expect influences what you experience. Not because the world bends to your will, but because your consciousness filters the infinite potential into a specific outcome. When your beliefs align with connection, you stop seeing the world as a collection of strangers and objects. You begin to see the reflection of yourself in every face, every event, every unfolding moment. This is not metaphysical poetry. This is the lived reality of entanglement. When you look at someone with compassion, you activate that resonance. When you speak truthfully, you align with coherence. When you act with integrity, you strengthen the thread of unity. And the more you practice this, the more your life becomes an expression of that deeper order. Synchronicities increase. Insight becomes effortless. You begin to feel guided not by something external, but by the intelligence woven into the fabric of being itself. This is where healing happens. Not just physical healing, but emotional, relational, existential. Because when you remember you are connected, the illusion of separation dissolves. And in that dissolution, suffering loses its grip. This connection is not theoretical. It is accessible. It is immediate. And it begins with one decision: to wake up. To wake up from the dream of isolation. To wake up from the trance of separation. To wake up into the awareness that you are not alone, and never have been. This is the call of quantum entanglement. Not just to understand, but to embody. Not just to study, but to live. When you respond to this call, something changes. You begin to carry a different frequency. You become more than a person navigating life. You become a node of consciousness in a vast, intelligent network. A transmitter of coherence in a field distorted by fear and confusion. And that field responds. Your presence becomes medicine. Your attention becomes alchemy. Your life becomes a signal that others can feel, even if they can't explain why. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You only need to stay open, to stay curious, to stay willing to let the mystery shape you. Because the mystery is not outside you. It is you. This is the invitation. To stop waiting for proof. To stop chasing permission. And to start living as if it were already true. Because it is. You are connected. You are entangled. You are participating in the unfolding of a universe so intricate so intelligent, so alive, that every moment is a miracle disguised as ordinary life. Let that awareness guide your choices. Let it inform your relationships. Let it shape your priorities. You are not here by accident. You are not a passive observer. You are a vital thread in the tapestry. And every thought you think, every word you speak, every act you perform, it all echoes. This is the power and the responsibility of awareness. And now, more than ever, the world needs those who are willing to live from that awareness, who are willing to feel the connection, even when it's not obvious, who are willing to act with love, even when fear is easier, who are willing to trust the quantum field, not as an escape but as a reminder that everything is connected, that nothing is random, that the same intelligence that coordinates particles across light years is present in your heartbeat, your breath, your being. So pause, feel that, and ask yourself, not with words, but with presence. What am I here to connect with? What am I here to remember? You already know the answer. It's been whispering through the silence, written in the spaces between your thoughts, echoing through your dreams. And now it's time to respond, not by thinking, not by analyzing, but by living. Live the connection, live the resonance, live the truth that you are not separate from anything, that the same field that holds galaxies together is holding you, guiding you, flowing through you. Let that awareness be your compass, and let your life be your response, because the science is clear, the mystery is real, and the connection is calling.